Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The College Insider. I'm Tracy White, and again I'm here today trying to talk to you about how to get that job. So we're going to talk about interviews today. We talked about resumes a few weeks ago, and we talked about that we would follow up with that with references and interviews, and so I wanted to go ahead and talk about interviews today. I know a lot of students are getting ready to graduate soon and looking for jobs. Some of the students in our programs are about to start applying for their specialty modalities, and so they're applying and having interviews to get into a specialty modality to continue their education. So I want to talk about both of those different scenarios of interviews today, and so we can kind of give everybody a little boost of confidence and a few tips to get through the next few weeks of things that might be going on with them, whether you're looking for their job or looking to apply to another educational program. Interviews have some main components that would go back and forth with either interview process. So let's talk about whether we're looking for selective admission programs, such as continuing your education, even into a master's degree program or something of that sort, or for a job. An interview is an interview, and yes, it will be different depending on the scenario, but there's still some things that are key to getting through the interview and being successful. For a job, your resume will get you the interview, but the interview will get you the job or not. That's something I tell my students a lot. That resume is what's going to introduce you on paper, and that will determine whether you get an interview or not. So the resume is really important to boost yourself, and it's your opportunity to talk about yourself and your good points and sell yourself a little bit. If you haven't watched the video on resumes, go back and watch it. Don't forget to like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel because I'm going to update you with good stuff every week. So again, if you haven't subscribed, hit that button right now and subscribe and like the videos and go back and watch them because I'm trying to give you really good information, but I want you to know that you're enjoying it, that you're watching it. And I can only do that if you subscribe and like. So remember, that resume is paper that will introduce yourself, get you that interview, but the interview is really key to getting the job or blowing it and not getting the job. And that's not what we want to happen. We want you to get that job or to get selected to that program. In 2022, and since 2020 with COVID, interviews have changed a little bit. In person or Zoom are both appropriate now. A lot of employers are using Zoom as an initial interview tool, meaning they'll do a preliminary interview with you to see if they think you may be a fit, just to get a lot of people together to do that. It's hard to get a lot of people and form a team for an interview committee. So sometimes they'll do that via Zoom. And then if you progress to step 2 or interview 2, maybe that's in person. So for my students currently that are applying to my programs, we're giving them the option to do in person or Zoom. A lot of people think Zoom is a lot easier, but really, I don't think it is. I think being in that room with someone gives you an advantage. Also, being in that employer situation whether it be a hospital or a company or a school, I think that gives you an opportunity to interview them as well. And I tell students all the time, an interview is for you as well. You're interviewing me and I'm interviewing you. I may not be a good fit for you. My program may not be a fit for you. So you want to know that. And sometimes if you're not on campus or at the place of employment, you may not get a feel for that environment. So in person is really good. Zoom is also an option. And again, like I said, preliminarily, they're doing those a lot more often to get you to phase 2 or interview 2. So don't be alarmed if they want to do it via Zoom. We're going to talk about some tips for Zoom in just a few minutes because there are some tips to make sure that you are using Zoom appropriately or any other format, Teams or whatever else they may be using. So keys to any interview, whether it be in person or a Zoom or any other virtual type thing, be prepared. In other words, there's a lot of things that go into be prepared. Be ready for your interview. Practice it, walk through it, check your equipment, check your computer, run through a fake Zoom, open the Zoom app and hit new meeting, and it will show you what you're going to look like on camera. Test your sound, test your video, all of those things. If you're going to an interview itself, know where that's going to be. You don't want to get there right on time and then have to find a department or a building and have no idea where that is. The worst thing you can do is show up late or frazzled, like you've been looking for someplace. That's not going to be a good first impression whatsoever. Dress is really important, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in just a few minutes. Do your homework on the company or the program. You should know a lot about that company or that program going into it. With everything we have online now, there's no reason for you not to go and research that company, know a little bit of background about it, or that program you're applying to. Know about it. Ask questions that are thought-provoking, that show them that you've done your homework and you know about that company and you know what they're doing. You know their success. You know anything you can find out about that company. You want to show that you have done your homework. Know who will be conducting the interview. A lot of times it'll be a panel. It may be 2 people. It may be 5 people. It may be 10 people. Know who will be doing that. And when they call to schedule your interview, you can ask the person that schedules it, who will be in this interview with me. And that way you can even know a little bit about them. You can know where they went to school or their background. And when you start having that kind of conversation with someone, then it's important that they know you have done your homework and that you really have honed in on them specifically and want that job well enough that you went and did a little bit of your homework. Carry a portfolio with you with questions. Write them down in advance. You will forget them once you get into the interview. I can promise you. Your head kind of starts spinning and you get into this deer in a headlight stance of like, oh my gosh, I was going to ask questions. I can't remember what they were. Write them down. I love when students ask me questions. It shows me that they're intrigued, that they want to know about what they're getting into, that they want to know about my program. Again, it's an interview for them as well as for me. I like that. Don't ask about salary right away. This is something that'll come. It may have been posted with the job. If it wasn't, let them bring it up. They will bring it up. And again, if they just ask you outright, what salary do you want? That's something you have to be careful with because you don't want to undershoot yourself and you don't want to overshoot yourself. So doing a little homework maybe about what their starting salaries are, what they do for experience and those types of things. But let them bring it up. They will bring it up in an offer to you. And then you have to you'll have some time to accept that or negotiate with that. But don't start out by asking about money. Do brief answers, but not one word. I've interviewed students for 27 years, and some students have one-word answers, and it's like pulling teeth to get information from them. They will answer the question with a single word. I've also had students that will talk for 15 minutes on one question. You need to find a balance in between. You need to be able to answer the question, but briefly. If you continue to talk and talk and talk and talk, that doesn't give them time to ask more questions, and you're probably going to run out of time before they finish the interview. Because usually it's allotted time frames that they have given these interviews for. A lot of people have blocked off their schedule to do these interviews, and so they try to stay on schedule. You don't want to throw that off. If there's quiet space, that doesn't mean you have to keep talking. They may be writing down your answers or making notes. That doesn't mean you have to fill that with words. Although, don't just answer the question in a very short sentence and then sit there. They may be trying to get you to say a little more. So you're going to have to be able to read cues on this. But I can tell you if you're given a 10-minute answer for one question, that's probably a little bit too long. This is also a time to answer questions to your strengths. If they ask you a question, relate it back to their goals and how you can benefit them through your strengths. So always use those questions as a jumping off point to talk about yourself and how you can help them do better in that area. Remember, 2/3 of communication is nonverbal. That means they're watching your posture, they're watching your expression. All of those things can tell a lot more than your words alone. So be careful with that, especially if you're doing this through Zoom. I've interviewed students that sit like this or like this. That's not appropriate. You want to be sitting up straight, good posture, looking straight ahead at the camera or addressing the people. If you're in the room, you want to address whoever asks you the question, but you also want to try to talk to different people along the way. I'm the program director, and a lot of times students will talk strictly to me, and there's 3 other people in the room, and I almost feel bad because they're not looking at anyone else. Look at everyone in the room, but address the person that asked you the question first, and then start looking to other people to answer the questions. That shows that you're interested in everyone in the room and not just one person. Be on time. Don't be late. And the interview starts when you pull in the parking lot. And I heard somebody talk about this one day, an HR person that parked next to someone coming back from lunch. They walked in with them, got on the elevator with them, and went all the way up to the boardroom with them. So they saw that person from the moment they pulled in the parking lot. So if you had a nasty, dirty car, what's that going to say about you? If when you open the door of your car, 50 pieces of trash fall out, what's that going to say about you? You're not very organized or neat or put together. If you get out putting on your shoes and dressing yourself, that's going to show that you are a little bit usually running out of time. You don't want to park and have to be running in the building. You should be, as soon as you pull in, you should be together, sit there a minute and get your thoughts and composure, take a deep breath, get out and walk in professionally. And the moment you hit that ground, you should be confident, hold your shoulders back, walk straight ahead, acknowledge people that are there, say hello, be polite, and just remember, everything starts from that moment. I've even heard of people seeing somebody out the window pull up for the interview and they watch them get out and, how do they react? So it sounds crazy, but it's true. And I've heard this from more than one HR person. So just keep that in mind. Some things they may ask you. They may ask things like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? So these are things you can go ahead and think about ahead of time. Sometimes your weaknesses are not bad. Sometimes a weakness can be, oh, I care a lot about people. So if you're going into a healthcare profession in which, you're dealing with sick people all the time, sometimes people say, well, my weakness is that, I get really attached to patients. Well, that's not really a weakness, but it's a good answer because it shows that your weakness is not a bad thing. Does that make sense? You don't want to say your weakness is you're always late and you get up late and you miss a lot of work because you're sick. I mean, you need to think about those answers and what they're going to be. Why would you be a good candidate? Why do you fit in here with this company? Why do you fit in here with this program? What have you learned about our program? Do you know what we do? Do you know what we manufacture? Do you know our sales for the past year? Those kinds of things. And how are you going to help us meet our goals? That's the overall question they want to know. What about your honesty and your integrity? They might give you a case scenario of something. What would you do in a situation when you saw an employee stealing things from work? Maybe it's just a stapler and Post-it pads. What do you do? Some type of question related to that. They'll probably ask you something related to your goals or your 5-year plan. So be thinking about, what are your personal and professional goals? What do you want to be doing in 5 years? And again, relate that back to their company. If they're a growing company, that's great. Your 5-year plan is to grow with them, to move up in the company, to take on more roles in leadership. Things like that are what they're looking for. Critical thinking. They may give you off-the-wall questions just to see how you critically think. Had a friend that told me that they did it, that when she used to interview applicants, one of the questions that was asked was, how many golf balls fit into a limousine? Crazy. Not applying for a limousine company. They're wanting you to ask more questions. So they throw out a big random question for you, and they're wanting to see if you can critically think and come back and say, well, how big's the limousine? What's the size of the limousine? And then to just think about that. There's not a number they're looking for. They're looking to see if you know how to critically think and how you would answer that question. And it's okay to chuckle a little bit and be like, well, let's see. Well, I need to know a few other facts and ask a few other facts. But if you just sit there and panic and think that you're supposed to come up with 5,332,000, that's really not what they're looking for. They're seeing if you can critically think on your feet. So remember that. If you get stumped on a question, just take a minute. Just say, let me think about that just a second, instead of dead silence. If they ask you something, I had a student do this one time interviewing them. I asked them a question, and it was like nothing, deer in the headlights, and they just stared at me. It seemed like for 5 minutes. It was probably only 30 seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. If you're thinking, just say it. Say, let me think. Give me just a second. Let me think about this. And then proceed with an answer, okay? Just remember how you would expect someone to answer you and just providing that feedback. Okay, appropriate dress. Remember, this is your first impression. You want to wear something that's professional, but again, different dress codes for different interview types. Medical is different than educational, is different than business, is different than, than a student. So medical would be less formal than business, etc., but better safe than sorry. Don't ever underdress. You'd much rather be overdressed. And you can ask the person that sets up the interview, like, what is the appropriate dress for the interview? Is it formal? Is it casual? Is it business casual? And then you have to kind of look that up. My daughter and I kind of butted heads a little bit on this when she graduated college and she was applying for professional jobs. I've always been in healthcare and she's in a corporate world, and that meant two different things to us. And so she got the job, so she must have known what she was talking about. But you can ask around and see what casual business, and all those attires are. But just don't underdress. You also want to make sure that you don't wear anything real flashy. You want to try to stay with maybe some solid colors. Make sure you have sleeves. No one wants to see sleeveless, spaghetti strap, tank top type things in an interview process. If you're a man, wear a belt. I would say tuck your shirt in, although I know the style is for most men to not tuck their shirt in, but when you're talking about interviews, we're still talking about a little bit more appropriate dress. Conservative shoes. Okay, ladies, if you can't walk in these really high 7-inch heels, do not wear them to an interview, okay? I hate to see a student walk in these shoes they don't know how to walk in and they stumble. Wear shoes that are appropriate, conservative, that you can walk confident in. This is all about confidence, guys. Not cockiness, but confidence. And so wearing shoes that don't fit you, that you don't know how to walk in, are not appropriate. Little or no jewelry. You don't want a lot of flashy jewelry, and you definitely don't want cheap jewelry because that just looks overly cheap. Neat hair, no strong perfumes or fragrances. That's really off. A lot of people can't deal with fragrances, and so if you walk into a room and you have someone in the room interviewing you that's allergic or can't stand really strong smells, that could be a problem. You don't want to be remembered as that person. You want to have neatly trimmed and groomed nails. So girls, that means if you have chip nails, just make sure that your nails are clean and neat and polish is not chipping off of them. For guys, trim your beard, your facial hair, just look neat and put together. No gum, no cell phones. You don't want your cell phone to ring. No drinks. They may offer you water, and that's fine, but don't bring in, a big thing of water and gulp it during the interview. That's just not appropriate. If you need to take a sip of water, that's fine. But try to be quiet about it and, just don't gulp the whole bottle. Use breath mints. Key, very easy, cheap thing to do, and a lot of people forget it, but it's really important. And then carry a portfolio. That could have a printed resume if you're old school and still want to hand it out. It could carry any reference letters that you may have, and we'll talk about that later. Next week, we're going to do references. But just a place to write down your questions or take notes. It looks very professional to do that. So Zoom interviews, real quickly. So everything that we've already talked about will apply to Zoom interviews as well. But what we need to talk about in Zoom interviews is how you appear on screen. So you need to find a backdrop that is a neutral place with not a lot of distractions. So you can see behind me, this is for my YouTube channel. This is not an interview, but it would probably still be okay for an interview because there's not a lot of distracting things back there. You don't want, bright, flashy things. You don't want a lot of lights. You don't want to glare. You don't want windows a lot of times. If you don't have a place, just make you a drape out of a towel or a sheet. You can make that. There's also virtual backgrounds in some of these, but they tend to make your head look like a halo around it, so be careful with those. Keep all animals and children in another room. When we taught on Zoom for a year, it was really difficult with pets and little siblings and parents and people home. If you're in an interview, it's really important that your cat's not sitting in your lap or your dog's not barking in the back. You need to make sure to have them in a separate room. That will be very distracting, and for a lot of people, it would be a big turn off. Practice on Zoom. Make a fake meeting in Zoom. You can go in and hit new meeting and have your own little meeting where you're just adjusting your light. You're looking at your camera and where it falls in the picture. You can adjust what's behind you and position yourself in that frame. So when it opens and you're there for the interview, you look appropriate and you're not having to sit there and do this for 30 minutes. You're not moving everything. That's very distracting for people. Shoulders up. Not too close to the camera. I'm not going to sit like this, and I'm not going to lean on it. I'm going to be back where you can see basically from my shoulders up. I'm going to have good posture, and I'm going to check my sound and video before I get started before it's time to start. Okay, and you're going to log on early and be ready. Okay, confidence. I've talked a lot about that, but be confident, not cocky. There's a huge difference. If you don't know what that is, we need to do a video on that probably. And good luck, because really, don't be nervous. Take a deep breath through your nose, out your mouth before you walk into the room, and just have confidence in yourself. If your resume got you the interview, then you're qualified. So you just need to try to level your head, make this an opportunity to sell yourself, and learn a little bit about the company as well. If you have questions, email me, the.collegeinsider@yahoo.com. I'll be glad to give you some little tips if you need more, but please subscribe. Please share this with your friends. I want to help grow this YouTube channel so I can continue to bring you this kind of stuff. I enjoy it. I hope you're enjoying it. So please like and subscribe and share it if you don't mind. And good luck with all those interviews in the coming months or years, whatever it is. But remember, you got this. You can do this. Thanks, guys.